Okay, my name is Tom Ricks, and I'm here with Tom Friedman. And welcome back to FPTV, which is the foreign policy equivalent of ESPN. Tom Friedman needs absolutely no introduction, so I'm just going to leap right into it.
Please.
Tom, what is the overlooked news story of the year?
I think the most overlooked news story of the year is really the most overlooked news story of the last 5 years, Tom, which is that we've entered what I would call the third great IT revolution. The first great IT revolution was the mainframe computer. The second was the move to the desktop and the web. And the third, the one we're in the middle of, is the combination of mobile devices, social networks, and the cloud. And I think that convergence of social mobile cloud is actually the plumbing, the technological plumbing underlying a lot of these revolutions today around the world. It's been the most overlooked story for the last 5 years. It's been disguised by both 9/11 and the subprime crisis. But it's actually changing everything.
And do you think it's at the root of a lot of the political changes we're seeing now?
I do. I believe it's both the cause and effect of things. That is, what I call the hyper-connecting of the world. We've gone from a connected world to a hyper-connected world. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, it it's actually creating a lot of sources of strain on people in the workplace because we have vast improvements in productivity. The average employer now has access to so much more cheap software, cheap automation, cheap robotics, cheap labor, and cheap genius. And therefore, the pressure on every worker rises. And at the same time, the same technology gives us the ability to organize and communicate, to protest about it. And so it's like a brief theory of everything. I think it's all wrapped up, though, with this move from a connected to a hyper-connected world.
Now the downside. What's the worst idea of the year?
Worst idea of the year. Well, I think that was the most overlooked story of the year. I would say the best idea of the year, I'll be very parochial from an American point of view, I think was the Simpson-Bowles plan to basically deal with our long-term fiscal deficit. Mm-hmm. And I think the worst idea of the year was President Obama's decision to ignore the Simpson-Bowles plan.
Mm-hmm. Google says information wants to be free. Do you think so?
Well, I think, again, in a hyper-connected world, basically, in a world, Tom, where everyone who has a blog is a reporter, everyone who has a cell phone is a paparazzi, and everyone who has access to YouTube is a filmmaker, everybody else is a public figure. Mm-hmm. And so whether information wants to be free or not, I think we're all going to be increasingly transparent. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the biggest issue in the world, I think at the human interaction level, really comes from a book of a friend of mine, Dov Seidman, simply called How, because basically how you live your life, how you say you're sorry, how you conduct your business, how you treat others, how you behave in the workplace, is going to be so much more important because I can now tell other people about your hows more quickly, more easily, without an editor, libel lawyer, or any other restraints. And therefore, I really think we're in the age of behavior. That's really Dov's argument from his book. And I think that's the natural corollary of a world where information, whether it wants to be free, is going to be free.
Finally, a novel or a movie that you would recommend?
Well, my favorite movie of the year, which I think is the best movie of the decade, is called Up in the Air. It's a George Clooney movie. And I think that George Clooney movie is the movie of our time. After all, what is it about? George Clooney plays a man whose job is to go around the world firing people face to face on behalf of multinationals, and he loses his job when his assistant discovers a cheaper way to do it over the internet. And that is the move from connected to hyper-connected. And I think that was a brilliant movie. It's actually the movie of our time. My favorite book of the year is Arvind Adiga's book, Last Man in Tower. It's a book basically about India and basically rapid economic change in India and what happens when somebody wants to tear down a sort of downtrodden apartment block and one resident refuses to go. So,
thank you very much.
Pleasure, Tom. Thank you very much.
Please.